What's up, everybody? It's Ali from the Somebody Some podcast. As we get closer to the end of our first season, the guys wanted to tackle the idea of being intentional about who and what is included in our daily consumption. This past election season proves we have to be careful about what we consume. I'm also excited to say we have a special announcement coming soon. Let's just say this won't be the only podcast coming from our creative team. Be sure to leave us a rating and a review. And thank you for continuing to grow with us. Enjoy the episode.
Welcome to another episode of the Somebody Son podcast, where biting your tongue is never allowed. Young men battle with the pressures of manhood every day. Each episode, we tackle topics that focus on worth, actions, and relationships. Our goal is simple: help men win the war with themselves.
Always a pleasure to see you, gentlemen.
Sir.
Look, I'm gonna dive straight in. I really want to tackle this conversation around consumption and what you're feeding yourself. Like, how do you two remain mindful or intentional around who's consuming your time, which friends are consuming your attention, things of that nature? How do you focus on that?
Yeah, so look, when I think about consumption, I'm thinking about books, articles, podcasts, media, you know, everything that I'm reading and or putting in here is very intentional. Yeah. So we talk about, you know, like planning with the end in mind. So like if I have an outcome, specific outcome, I'll read and or watch some media that directly, you know, correlates to it. So in terms of giving my time to other people, I feel like the number one thing for me is that giving time to people is it's amazing. You know, it feeds you, you know, relationship wise, all of those things. But one thing that I had to realize from the beginning was that I need to give enough time to myself for personal development.
Sure.
Yeah. So that I could then say, okay, I have enough time to, you know, go after these goals. These are my goals and I can work for them. So.
Sure. Chris, what about you?
Yeah, man, I'm just feeding off what Brother Ali said here. I think everything he just talked about is creating a diet. How do you create a diet that's conducive for the outcome, that's going to get you to that outcome? Whether, again, that's physical, mental, which encompasses emotional, I believe, and spiritual. So for me, it's really first coming up with whatever it is that I'm trying to target and backing into it accordingly. So for example, right now, a big part of me is spiritual growth. And so that means most of my day has to be focused on centering myself, quieting my environment, and getting to that desired place. And so, you know,
Are there because I want to interject just a little bit. Are there specific books you two have found to really help you navigate what's consuming your time, what's consuming your attention, what you're feeding yourself?
Yeah, I think As a Man Thinketh was one that I picked up when I was Ali's age. Okay. And I think now there's one, and that's still relevant. Now there's a book called To Know Yourself. Okay. By Swami Satchidananda. Okay. That's helping me in that way.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would say two books for me would be The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. Okay. Just beautiful, just about, you know, chasing your dreams, you know, sticking to basically your gut, you know, and then Outliers. So knowing beautiful book too, game-changing book. Yeah. Just knowing the kind of things that can help you along the way in terms of the path towards success.
Yeah,
But I think one thing for me specifically, which is, I feel like, I don't think it goes underserved, but it's media. So what you're doing with your time, like even on drives, you know, or in the shower, or, you know, you have a little bit of extra time. What are you consuming in that?
Yeah, influencing your downtime.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's powerful. 2019 was probably the greatest year, not probably, it was the greatest year for my family unit. Yeah. Despite so many things happening around, switching locations as far as geographically where we live, tackling new career choices, switching companies, things of that nature. Yeah. What I found is I choose a theme every year. So last year's theme was learnings. And so I focused and I was very intentional around what I was trying to learn. I found that to be super incredible in influencing what I consume because I only wanted to consume things where I thought I could learn.
Yeah.
And I grew the most spiritually. So there's a book, I would strongly encourage anyone to read it. It's called The Circle Maker by Mark Batterson. He serves as a senior pastor at National Community Church. And reading that book, I did it with my best friend, Alex. So we read that book. We did like a 40-day devotional with it called Draw the Circle. We did like a 10-day fast at the end. And we grew so much spiritually that we became even more sensitive to what we were feeding ourselves. Certain movies or certain friends, we just found ourselves spending little by little less time with.
Discernment.
Yeah, because you start to feel a little bit more uncomfortable in certain settings.
Yeah.
When your awareness is heightened, right? Oh man, and so it completely changed us for the better. For the better. The other book I would say is that really like just super powerful, Unlearn by Humble the Poet. Part of the challenge or journey around consumption and where you're investing your time is unlearning things that have been habits for so long, right? Like I've seen myself just like, I've done this so much. Why do I do that?
Yeah, it's certain things just growing up that become indoctrinated in you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I want to know, so you talked about spiritual, you talked about diet.
Yeah.
So I want to know, like, what aspects of life should you generally try to, consume information to better yourself for? Like, whether it be spiritual, physically, those types of things.
So I'm a huge fan of diversity of thought.
Yeah.
Like I'm a huge fan. There's a lot to be gained from different perspectives. I try to feed myself 3 different ways. So some people say mind, body, and soul. I focus on emotional, my physical and spiritual. And so I try everything that I do. I try to make sure that I'm feeding myself in that regard. On the spiritual side, we kind of talked about that already. Mark Batterson is quickly emerging as my favorite spiritual author. As it relates to like physical, like just learning things. Like I started cryotherapy, right? And what does that look like for rehabilitation and recovery? So learning more about what to read physically. And then emotionally too, 5 love languages, Dr. Gary Chapman should be required reading. Required reading for people in relationships. For men only and for women only, for couples. If you're in a couple relationship, that's good. Strength finders. Like my wife and I have found that we're very complementary just based on I would call it our DNA. So like our personal makeup, our characteristics, just the way she thinks, the way I think, the way I am with crowds, the way she is with crowds. So things like strength finders, dude, like you could dive so deep with your significant other and even friends by using these tools. These resources are out there. I just think one of the things men struggle with is not only just knowing the tools, but having access to them. Yeah,
one thing you hit on a lot of good resources for relationships. I want to add Esther Perel, Where Should We Begin? Okay. Beautiful counseling sessions, one time only, and people get really raw. And you'll learn that despite them coming from different backgrounds, sounding different, literally been from different nationalities, that we all go through the same thing. And that empathy and that perspective really helps you grow in monumental ways. You also touched on diversity. I think that's huge, and being mindful of the pipelines that you're leveraging for intake. I think it evolves as you grow. So for each stage in your life, you're going to have to be mindful of, okay, I got that, I achieved that last goal. So how do I evolve and change my diet? I have a question for you, Ali.
Okay.
You are what? You're going into you're in your second semester of college.
Yeah.
How has your diet evolved since you were in high school and where you are now?
So that's an amazing question. I would say that my goals have definitely changed. I'm 19 now, second semester of college. And as I've experienced more of life, I've learned more about myself, you know what I mean? And more about what I want. So my diet has changed in the way that I'm more centered towards, what I want to do in life, you know? So I'm planning accordingly around that now. Yeah. So everything that I'm doing is intentionally driven towards that.
Preparatory.
Very preparatory, very intentional. So I'll find that a lot of the things that I do are in preparation for, trying to better myself mentally, physically, just to get an edge, sort of, just to get a jump start on, all right, these are the goals that I have set for myself. And I write them all down, you know what I'm saying? And then I plan, I reverse engineer it.
Yeah.
And the one thing we've been talking about here in terms of consumption is time. Like, I think that a lot of people are lost on the fact that we don't have as much as we think we do. You know, like you blink and all of a sudden you're 19 years old. You were just walking around 5 years old.
Yeah. College days swiftly passed.
College days swiftly passed. Like y'all.
Yeah. I like what you just said about the edge part, because life is already hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Life in itself, regardless if you're a man or woman, it's already hard.
Yeah.
Then when you add on, relationships, jobs, paying bills, family members, friends, relatives, relocation, travel, all these other things, it becomes even more difficult. I think one of another reason why I'm so careful about what I consume or who consumes my time is because I do want to edge on this difficult thing called life.
So
right?
and I have a question for both of you. A lot of people I've listened to, I've talked to a lot of successful people, and one of the things that they stress on me is like, be careful of who you sort of, spend your time with, be careful of who you keep in your circle.
Yeah.
How have you seen that directly transpire in your life in terms of influence? How is it that sort of consumption, that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
Because that's consumption of time. How is that influence?
I'll let you tackle that one.
I mean, so I would say that number one, it is extremely important to be mindful of who's around you for varying reasons, whether we're talking the spiritual level or just the being physical existence. We know how vibes can be influenced by the people and their purpose during their time around you. So knowing who's in your sphere of influence and ensuring that you're being the CEO of your life.
Yeah.
And so you got to hire and fire, and it's a tough thing to do.
Hire and fire.
That's something you should do gracefully, mindfully, and appropriately.
Yeah.
But it's a responsibility that you own, because what I found in varying parts of my life is that I've had to reach out and grab and hold on to new networks and new resources because I wasn't being fulfilled with what the conversation that I was having the day before, the weeks before, the months before. I wasn't growing as fast as I needed to go, just simply because I kind of lacked, being honest with you, people who were thinking in the ways that I was thinking, and I think one of our responsibilities is to help everyone around you grow. I wouldn't be here without the amazing people around me. This isn't a me thing. But what I will say is that there may be some times where you reach limitations.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You don't want to be the wisest, the smartest in the room.
Yeah.
And so when that's the case, make that modification, man. Switch it up.
Yeah. Iron sharpens iron, right?
Yeah.
And here's the beautiful thing. Once someone starts sharpening you, you will notice the difference when you're in an environment where you're not being sharpened.
Yeah.
Right. So I think you're spot on. You heard people say or hear people say that you are the average of the 5 people you talk to the most. Mm-hmm. And what I have found is that influences you. Like if you're doing really well, whether it's in your relationship, whether it's in exercise, whether it's at business, and you're feeding that to other people, it will sharpen them. And the ones that don't, you will see them bow out gracefully with regards to how much time they're spending with you. But I love the fact that you're intentional about that. There's a book by Robin Moriarty called "What Game Are You Playing?" And I won't bore you with trying to dive into each level of the book. But one of the key themes she talks about is basically your life plan, your life objective is different than the person next to you. So you have to be very intentional in seeking that edge to accomplish whatever you're trying to accomplish in your own personal game. So being a CEO of your life, I love that idea. Love that phrase.
One thing, just I want to round off that point. This isn't to say that you do outgrow people.
Yeah.
But there are people who serve different purposes in your life. So there are folks who I will never let go because I wouldn't be me without them. Yep. I wouldn't be nourished and fulfilled. I wouldn't laugh as hearty as I like to laugh without them in my life. I wouldn't smile as wide as I smile without them in my life. And at the same time, they may not be interested in the evolution of technology and consumption economics in the way that I may be. You know what I mean?
I think what you're talking about also is a certain level of empathy. And that's really what I've explored a lot recently, is just becoming more empathetic. One of the things I want to make sure we're mindful of is I'm not trying to say that because you outgrow certain people that you still can't treat them in a loving fashion or be there for them when they need encouragement. What I have become less and less judgmental the more and more I learn about empathy. And so just because someone is interested in a different topic than you, or they may not be trending in the same direction you are, that doesn't mean you should treat them differently. Like that, to your point, that relationship may just be in a different place, and there's nothing wrong with that. But don't look down. I don't look down on people, because one of the things you don't want to do is be so judgmental towards others that when your time comes to go through storms or through valleys, the folks that you might have kicked on your way up, trust me, they're gonna definitely kick you on your way down. So
for sure.
You need to be intentional with your time, but still be kind to all, essentially.
Yeah. So is there a sort of, if somebody came up to you and asked you, like, is there a blueprint or a recipe, if you will, for what I can do to gain that edge that I want so bad in my life, what would you tell them? Like,
I think honestly, the blueprint for each of us is different, but being intentional about reverse engineering, backing in, okay, this is my outcome, this is my desired result, and creating a healthy diet, and remembering that there are many facets of life. Yeah. Don't focus so much on the business. Don't focus so much on the social. Don't focus so much on just you, because you're going to miss out on your opportunity to serve those around you. So the blueprint is yours and yours alone. It's unique. But I think the components of the blueprint, of the schematic, are the same for many of us. For all of us.
So I hearken it to a blender, right? And so a blender, most blenders have either 6 or 8 spokes. And I went through this with one of the executive coaches we have. She told me to go through and label each spoke with something that was important to me. So like my marriage is important to me. Fatherhood is important to me. My physique is important. Eating healthy is important to me. Spending time on my own self-development is important to me. Your blender is going to be different from other people's blender. Your goal, though, is to make sure you keep the blender spinning, right? When that blender is spinning, and sometimes the spokes are going to change. Like for you, one of your spokes, it sounds like, is college, right? Yeah. You're trying to glean as much insight from your professors and learn about economics and investments. Once you graduate from college may not be one of those spokes anymore, right? Yeah. But each person's blender is important. You just got to figure out what's healthy living for you. Yeah. And just because what's healthy living for me and my blender may be different from healthy living for you and your blender, that doesn't mean that my blender is better than yours or your blender is wrong or anything. To your point, we all have our own things that are most important to us and how we're defining who we want to become. So that's what I try to do. I just try to keep the blender spinning. Yeah. And to your point, sometimes that pendulum swings where I'm focusing a little bit on one blade than the other one. That's why I'd really depend on those folks around me, including my wife, to just let me know, hey man, you might want to pay a little bit more attention here, and be open to that kind of feedback. I think a lot of times my growth has come because someone had the courage to pull me to the side and say, hey man, I see you moving in this way. I know the way you define success in this regard. You're trending differently than where I know you want to pursue or get to. So you might want to alter some things. Absolutely. You got the right people in your boardroom. Yeah. You know? To that, yeah. Do y'all have is it a monthly check-in with your diets? Is it a semesterly check-in? Like, do you even consciously plan to do a check-in? Like, how do y'all change what podcasts, what YouTube channels you're subscribing to, what food you're eating, what workouts you're doing? How does that work?
So like we've talked about so often together, I think that it's important to have a very, very diverse, thought, or a very good balance, basically, of what you're consuming. So one of the things that I had an issue with from the beginning was I would set a goal and I would say, all right, I'm gonna consume. Let's say my goal is learning a trading style, right, for an investment. I'm gonna pour all of my time into this until I have it down. Yeah. And the issue that I was running into was that the other facets of my life became out of balance. So like my relationships with other people, they got sort of out of whack. Or, my mental side of everything, my very mindful, conscientious side of life became out of whack because I was so focused in on one thing. So I would say that I change it so often so that I don't feel like I'm pouring too deep into something because too much of one thing can be very bad.
Yeah,
you know
I like that. I just ask the folks close to me to have courageous conversations with me. The same way it's really, sometimes I think we make it more difficult than what it needs to be, but also at the same time, I don't want to oversimplify it.
Right.
But if you're working, whether you're the CEO or you're an employee, you're constantly having conversations around your performance. Yeah. Right. That's how I am when it comes to how do I shuffle what's prioritizing for me in my diet or how do I shift it. Yeah. I just ask those around me to have like really courageous conversations with me. And if I get to a place where I'm doing really well in one area, I may back off from making it a priority because other areas just need additional attention. So
I love that. So you build a healthy diet. Yeah. Everyone's blueprint is different, but we have really the same core components. Yeah. Encourage the people around you to have those open, honest, courageous conversations. Yeah. Make sure you have the right people around you so that they're nourishing you and feeding you in the different ways to contribute to that diet. Yeah. Anything else we left off? I mean,
nah, dude, I'm not coming after that. That was great.
No, bro, I think we cleaned the whole plate up.
Yeah, man.
That was good,
beautiful
man.
Thing, man.
Yeah, man. That was really good, man.
Cheers
I appreciate y'all.
Hey,
see y'all.
Dude,
it's always good to see you, man.
My guy.
You already know this young boy.
I got you. It's cool. I appreciate y'all, man. That was good.
Always, man.
That was good.
Always.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Somebody Some podcast. We encourage you to share this episode with a friend. And remember, on this path called life, you are not alone. Thank you for watching. Until next time.
She liked the way that I finessed it. She